Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities podcast behind Black business. And we have another very extraordinary guest. He's been on our show before, Andre Barnes of Numbers USA. And some of you may know about Numbers USA, and some of you may not, but you will know by the end of this show about Numbers USA. And we're going to be talking about public policy. We're going to be talking about immigration. And today is a special day, as Andre pointed out, where Barbara Jordan's 1985 congressional testimony came out about protecting vulnerable communities. And so this is going to be a very enlightening conversation. And Andre, I want to thank you for taking time to be with us tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, for having me back. Today is a special day. Barbara Jordan was a special lady. She was the first Black woman that was ever invited to speak at the Democratic National Convention. And she was the first Black American and the first woman. So I got to make that distinction, because if we put it all together, it doesn't show the magnitude. She was also a professor. She was a congresswoman. And she was someone that a lot of the congressmen and congresswomen really respected across the aisle. And there's just not a lot of people like that in today's political atmosphere. So I wanted to highlight that she was someone that was respected across the board. And one of the things that I want to highlight about her speech is that she said that it was important to protect American workers. And I think that notion is forgotten a lot of times when we're talking about what's going on in immigration. When we talk about immigration, oftentimes we're discussing the immigration topic from the point of view from the immigrants that are coming over into the country. We're looking at their issues. We're looking at their problems. We're looking at, once they get here, how people are treating them. We're discussing our collective history as a nation of immigrants. But at the same time, as Barbara Jordan said, we are a nation of laws.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And immigration is a big topic today. And it's been a big topic here in Chicago. There's been a lot of activity around immigration here in Chicago. People have mixed views about it. A lot of people have a misunderstanding about it. As you say, there's a history to this. And I have noticed in my time here, being born in Chicago and raised here in Chicago, I've seen immigration, come here and not quite able to stand back and look at the whole picture and see what is going on. I'm basically dealing with and responding to what's right there in front of me.
Right.
But as when I met you and I found out about Numbers USA and your perspectives on immigration and some of the literature that you have disseminated, it's given some historical and background information that I didn't know, such as people like Frederick Douglass and
Yep.
Randolph Scott and Booker T. Washington. Many of these people, they were against immigration, and
Absolutely.
and it wasn't, as I was reading through your more recent pamphlet, it wasn't the ethnic groups themselves, it wasn't the people themselves, it was the sheer numbers
That's
of
right.
people that were going through, and that's where they were able to create their public policy around trying to limit the number of immigrants that were coming in here, because if they hadn't, many of our people that wouldn't have been a part of that great migration that we had
Right.
with these jobs that they were able to come to the north and get and create, economic or wealth for themselves here, like in Chicago.
Absolutely. And I do want to share with your viewers that our founder is Roy Beck, and he wrote an article that he named the Barbara Jordan Blueprint. I want to make sure that we share that with anyone that shares their email with Denise,
Okay.
because what I'd like to do is send you that article because it's a nice teaser to our latest second edition, Back of the Hiring Line, the second edition.
Okay.
And
Absolutely.
the second edition has 30% more information than the first.
Wow.
And so there's 30% new information in here. And I'm telling you, that new information is amazing. The way that he expands upon this already untold history is just amazing. So one of the things that I noticed when I first came into Numbers USA is that it had this video of all the ships of these different groups, different waves of immigrants coming into the country. And this was mainly the groups of people that were coming from Europe in the Ellis Island days. And I
Hmm.
saw this video with ship after ship after ship coming in. And I was just thinking, well, maybe it's a time that the world was war torn, people are a little bit more poor. Maybe that was what was driving them. Well, no. Well, after the Civil War, one of the things that happened was the government decided that in order for the United States to rebuild after the war, they contracted companies to bring in these immigrants into the country by the shiploads. And those ships kept coming because there was a whole business set up around it. So you'd
Hmm.
have thousands of people coming at a time on those ships. And
Hmm.
each year you'd have like 300,000. Then another year you'd have 500,000. Then a few more years you'd have 800,000 people coming in every year. And those numbers just continued to grow until until we had World War I. And during World War I is when the German U-boats, the German submarines were sinking ships. And it was harder for these shipping companies to come over safely. So it
Hmm.
stopped those boats from coming. And a lot of those shipping companies started to make ships for war. So they're not bringing those people over. So between 1914 and 1918 was the green light for people to come up north to start getting jobs. And not only did those people come up, they had recruiters from factories that came down desperately promising Black Americans who were recently freed from slavery the
Hmm.
moon and stars. We're going to bring you a job. You're going to make all this money. You're going to get all this training. Come up north. We'll even give you a voucher for a train ticket. You don't even have to pay for your ticket. Come on up and you'll have a job. And what ended up happening is Black people started leaving by the thousands. And a lot of they left in such high numbers that the government wanted to start researching and determining why people were leaving so quickly.
Hmm.
And their their belief was that these recruiters that may have been like dressed as insurance agents were coming
Hmm.
down and recruiting thousands of people. But after they did their investigation, they found out that the thing that really pushed people to leave were letters from people that had moved up north
Okay.
with all the glowing stories about how much money they were making, and on top of that actually sending money down to people
Yeah.
who were still in the South. So that encouragement, those stories, those letters were what really drove people up north, because they were
Mhm.
hearing about their neighbors, their friends, their cousins getting jobs, and they left by the thousands.
So this brings another dynamic to the whole conversation around the Great Migration. We think about the racism that people were experiencing in the South,
Yes.
the Jim Crow laws, and all the things that were going on down there, lynching and people running from that. But then
Right.
there was another dynamic to the move, as you say,
Right.
once people got here, telling people how great it was. And it's interesting because I just had someone send me something on Facebook. It was a picture of two women that went to my grandparents' church, and they came from Tennessee. And I remember the oldest one telling me as a little girl, and it was like 10 of them. She had ten siblings,
Ooh.
and they came from Nashville. And
Mm-hmm.
she talked about how she helped each one of them come up here to Chicago. They
Yep.
all came here to Chicago. They stayed with her. She helped them get a job. They got
Yep.
a job. I think they were working in the cafeteria at this place downtown. But they all
Mm-hmm.
got jobs,
Yep.
and then some of them got city jobs. I think she ended up working as a ticket agent for CTA,
Wow.
and then her husband opened up a business over here in South Shore, a tire company, and they did quite well for themselves, and they all came up here one after the other because of how the others helped. And when you look at other people from other countries, they're doing you see them doing a lot of the same thing. And as you were talking about these ships and all these people coming in, I have recalled in the past having been at the airport at O'Hare and
Uh-huh.
seeing all of these people, a lot of Asians, mostly
Yep.
I would see a lot of Asians coming in and just lined up on that international side of the airport, people standing there with signs and numbers of people. When they came through, they knew who to meet, and I would see lines of people walking away with one person. So I
Wow.
mean, I saw this happening right here in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
at O'Hare Airport, with so many people coming in here from especially, like I said, from Asia. I would
Yeah.
I would see that here at the airport.
Absolutely. And with the increase in numbers of people coming in, it created a lot of pressure for jobs. So
Hmm.
the book, um, give me 1 second. My son is coming down here, and I need to get my other children to get him to stop interrupting. Give me 1 second.
Okay, family, we are talking to Andre Barnes of Numbers USA, and I am going to ask him to explain to you what their mission is as a group and an organization. But we're here to talk to you about immigration because immigration has had an impact on our communities. And the book that he's talking about here, Back of the Hiring Line, it also indicates a 200-year history of immigration surges, employer bias, and depression of Black wealth. And when we talk about Black depression of Black wealth, we look at the development of Black communities here in this country, and we also are looking at the fall of Black communities in this country, where we've had many very strong Black communities, and I can speak to here in Chicago on the West Side and on the South Side, and through gentrification, but also through this whole immigration process, I've seen our communities fall. Because as I graduated from college back in the 80s, um, I began to see so many of businesses, small businesses were opened up by people from other countries in our communities, and then our businesses started to fall. And today we have a very interesting scenario going on when it comes to not only businesses but the job market as well. We're left to these computer algorithms, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to explain it. What's going on with the job market? So many people try to apply for jobs and they're not able to get jobs, and
Right.
or maybe they don't want the jobs that they have out here offering. Yeah, it's an interesting scenario going on. But this whole immigration is something that needs to discuss. And what I do want you to explain is who is Numbers USA, and what Numbers USA is all about.
Absolutely. So we are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, and we only focus on immigration. We are a single subject organization,
Mm-hmm.
and we are a grassroots organization. So we have over 8 million members who will call their congressman, they'll send an email, they'll write a
Mm-hmm.
letter, they'll do an op-ed. And these are the type of actions that we need to do to keep pressure on these elected officials. So our foremost job is to make sure that we educate the public about immigration and that we encourage them to take action. So now that you know this information, what are you going to do with it? Well, here are
Mm-hmm.
some tools that you have for free to contact your elected officials. You can educate yourself about how your elected official has voted on immigration as well. And our grade cards go back 30 years. So we have a long history of how elected officials have voted on immigration because they can evolve over time. So we give them credit when the credit is due, and we let the public know when they're not performing at a high level as well. So that is Numbers USA in a nutshell. This year we will be celebrating 30 years as an
Wow.
organization, and we want to keep the standard high and ensure that we're providing people with great information. And the way to get to Numbers USA is to go to numbersusa.org. You can check out fact sheets. You can check out our videos. We're on all social media platforms, making sure that people are informed.
Absolutely. Excellent. So let's start with our emphasis on Barbara Jordan.
Fantastic.
Let's
Fantastic.
start there. Let's start there.
So, what I want people to know about Barbara Jordan is that Barbara Jordan didn't lose the argument on immigration. Barbara Jordan was poised and positioned to help us really lower immigration policy. She had a lot of support on both sides of the aisle. And what ended up happening, she ended up getting sick and she passed away before Congress voted on it. And um, after she passed away, the Congress really got influenced by big business. Big business went in, they influenced the people that they need to influence. And the bill that she had worked on that was going to really help us hold businesses accountable by putting in a system called E-Verify. So it's electronic verification. So if you ever applied for a job, one of the things that they do is they have you fill out an I-9 form. Well, the information that you fill out on that I-9 form is now checked by an electronic system that confirms that you have the right to work in the United States. Barbara Jordan also believed through the research that she had done on the committee that on immigration that she was on, they decided that in order to create less competition for Americans, workers, that immigration should be capped around 550,000 per year. Right now, with the combination of legal and with just legal immigration, we're looking at 1 million a year. That is unacceptable when we're trying to deal with the issues in our own community. And I want to share
Right.
a quote with you guys from J.A. Rogers. He was a Jamaican born American citizen who really understood freedmen history on how we have overcome a lot of issues And he also was for lowering immigration. So you have this Jamaican Black American who didn't just look at Americans and was like, hey, you guys need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. He studied the history. And this is something that he said. He said, America's duty is to solve her own race problems. And this she cannot do as long as the limited labor market is flooded with cheap European labor. Under present conditions, the curtailing of immigration at large is a wise move. So curtailing or lowering immigration is a wise move in his eyes. And when we're looking at Barbara Jordan, she made it very clear. It is not about where these immigrants come from or who they
Mhm.
are, is we need to deal with our own problems in America. And we don't want to make it harder for American workers to find work by bringing in people who are desperate for work.
Mhm.
If we look at the unemployment rate and if we look at the rate of people outside of the workforce in 1960, it was around 12%. In 2024, it is now 35%. So we have 35% of working age Americans, males, out of the workforce. So could you imagine if we were able to coach maybe 10 or 15% more Americans back into the workforce? We can probably deal with our workforce issues. And these were things that Barbara Jordan was pointing to. These were things that Frederick Douglass were pointing to. If you give Americans a chance to do the work, they will show up and show out.
Well, I can attest to that as having worked for 45 years and seeing younger people come behind me. There's a different work ethic, there's a different attitude about work and commitment, about how much time they're going to put into that job, or like when the clock stops, they stop. You know,
That's right.
it's a different kind of attitude towards work. Um, but as you were talking, and you were talking about the people coming here that are desperate for work, another thing has formed is that many of these people have come here and they've created their own networks of
Right.
economic engines,
Mm-hmm.
and it's being allowed. And I will retell the story I was sharing with you on the phone, and I've probably talked about it on this podcast before. But I recall when my daughter was about 16 and she wanted to get a job, and we frequented an Arab-owned restaurant in the
Yep.
community, and the family was very nice. We talked to them, and I said, "Well, maybe you can get a job on the weekend. Work a few hours or so on the weekend." And she approached them, and the owner came to me in a very, I guess, apologetic kind of way, but said, "I can't hire your daughter. I have to hire my own people." So now this is discriminatory just all day long.
That's
But
right.
this has been allowed to go on for decades, where you
Absolutely.
have groups of people now, they have a business where they're manufacturing the product, whether it's here or maybe from in the country that they came from. The products that they're selling, they're manufacturing and packaging, selling it.
Yep.
Only their people can work in that environment. Any services that they need have to come from their people. And so this has evolved as a result. Yeah, we have the numbers on top of this discrimination. And when they talk about America dealing with its own racism, these groups of people are allowed to do this. But if
That's right.
Black people were to begin to try to do something like this, it would be a problem.
Well,
And you would get all kind of pushback. And one of the reasons you would get a pushback today is because, okay, if we pull out, since we're the usury, you on the
yeah,
table, um, if we pull out, then we pull the legs out from under their businesses, because they've got everybody is in our community.
that's right.
Everyone is free to come into our community and set up shop. And the other sad part about it of that is nobody gives anything back. All of the
Exactly.
dollars go out, and that's how our organization started, because we see our dollars are not circulating in our community. So a lot of things, other things, this thing has snowballed into not only numbers, but other layers of discrimination against Black people here in America, and the destruction of Black communities.
That's right. And we saw the destruction of Black communities in Rosewood. We saw it in Tulsa, and the second edition goes over this in great detail
Hmm.
about what actually happened in Tulsa. Like I had always been told that in Tulsa they had burned the city down, and there were
Hmm.
vigilante groups that were out there killing Black people. But in the back of the hiring line, the second edition, it goes into more detail. It said that they had machine guns mounted on trucks, and they
Mm.
were shooting people indiscriminately in the street. They actually flew planes over and made homemade bombs and dropped the bombs on 1,400 different buildings. So they leveled that place to the ground. And what ended up happening was the tension over jobs again. So you had Black Americans that were starting to get a foothold after World War I, but when the soldiers started coming back, they were like, hey, wait a minute, we are supposed to get these jobs. And of course, there were already other immigrants that were there also pushing back. So it created a lot of tension and problems over jobs. And you see that whenever there's an uptick in the amount of immigrants coming in, we see a couple of things. We see that wages go down, and also inequality goes up, because what we saw during the Great Migration, when Black Americans were leaving to go north, the Black Americans that stayed, they started to see that the Southerners started to treat them better, and they got more opportunities, because they were like, well, this is not good for business if we keep driving these people away. So then they
Hmm.
had to think about, okay, well, maybe we need to open up better schools for Black Americans. Now that we don't have a lot of them here, maybe they'll stay if we open up education opportunities or give them better jobs or better pay. So the opportunities changed when Black Americans were able to get these jobs and move north. So when we see that the numbers increase, inequality can decrease. Sorry, inequality will increase, and wages also decrease, which is a problem. And when they have a steady stream of cheap labor, they're not going to go out of their way to hire Black Americans or any Americans.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Numbers USA often, emphasizes immigration reduction as a policy goal, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So can you identify some specific public policy outcomes, or I would say, what specific public policy outcomes does the organization believe are achievable here, let's say in the next few years?
Absolutely. There are some bills that are on the books right now that basically have Barbara Jordan's fingerprints all over them. And this is what we like people to do. It's one thing if we get executive orders to secure the border, but we need long-term legislations because, as we've seen from administration to administration, they can undo what the previous administration has done. So we need long-term immigration. So there's all kinds of laws on the book, and I definitely want to share those with you right now. Just give me a second just to go through my notes. Yes. So the America First Immigration Act, which is HR 8586. So that's HR House Resolution 8586. This bill would shore up a lot of the problems that we have at our border with loopholes that allow companies to hire people under the table. They're going to put American workers first and not allow the jobs magnet to draw people into the country, which is even more important now since we recently got the ruling from the Supreme Court that they're not going to get rid of the loopholes for birthright citizenship. One thing that the media did so well was put it out there that Trump wanted to get rid of birthright citizenship. And that's not what he wanted to do. What he wanted to do was get rid of the loophole so that people that came from other countries that had children here, that and neither one of the parents were American citizens, could not anchor themselves to this country by getting pregnant. So that was lost in the media. And I don't even think that some of the Supreme Court justices were putting that together when they were reviewing the ruling, because it became a court of opinion and emotion because of who the president is, and because they feel that if we get rid of this precedent that was the wrong ruling in the previous court ruling, but if we got rid of that precedence, that would somehow hurt American citizenship going forward, and that's not the case. We needed to get rid of those loopholes. It didn't happen. We're going to keep working towards it, but that was a problem.
Andre, I don't want to cut you off here, but people may I don't know how people may see this, or people may think that this isn't happening, but I've actually seen it. I've actually been on the airplane where going to an African country, and full of newborn babies on the plane. Going back to their country, and people are always going to find a way, to try to get over or whatever, better themselves or what have you. And so this is significant, and then once people get citizenship, then they have rights. They want their rights. Their rights to health care, their rights to housing. Here in Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, when he was the mayor, he created an organization through the city hall that was called New City, New America.
Right.
And it was for basically immigrants. All the people that were a part of it were immigrants.
Yep.
And they had support for housing, health care, education, not getting a job so much, but opening up a business.
Right.
They got training in our political system, learning how the politics works in this system. They were getting all of this support, just for being an immigrant.
That's right.
And this happened right under our nose, right here in Chicago at City Hall.
Yep. I saw a study from a student from Columbia or Harvard. And basically, this student wrote that because of Trump's enforcement, it was going to hurt our overall GDP because immigrants start all these businesses, and that's going to hurt our overall numbers. Well, she was wrong, because when we've had situations where we haven't had so many immigrants, companies adjusted. And the perfect example is the Ford company. They didn't have Ford was like building itself up, they didn't have access to a whole bunch of immigrants. When they lost the stream of immigrants coming in for doing cheap labor, what did they do? They modernized. They changed their business. They started using interchangeable parts. So they didn't need to have so many workers. They could have a
Mhm.
few workers work efficiently and they could pay them more. The
Mhm.
problem with these companies is they don't want to pay. They don't want to
Right.
share the money with Americans, and Americans are not willing to work for pennies on the dollar. We cannot afford it. We're not in a situation where we can live 10 to 12 to a house and make ends meet. We're not in a situation where we can live outside of what's considered a legal American lifestyle. Like we don't get those types of situations where we're cutting hair on the street without a permit. Like they're
Mhm.
they're they're taking a blind eye. But if you have children selling lemonade without a permit, sometimes the police will roll up and be like, "What are you doing?" But if
Mhm.
it's sometimes if it's immigrants, they just look past it. Oh, it's their own economy. Well,
Mhm.
when you have people that you're treating as second class citizens, like pseudo citizens, then you're going to allow them to have their own class, because what they're doing is keeping them around so that they could serve this other class of people, that they can get the benefits through working them long hours, giving them horrible pay. They're taking all the profits from saving organizations money, and they're just lining their pockets. But when it comes to Americans, they're just like, "Oh, you guys are lazy. We don't want you. You guys don't want to work." It's not true. And the perfect example of that is in 2005. In 2005, we had Hurricane Katrina.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people say perception is reality. That's not always true, because um, if you remember the clips from Hurricane Katrina, you saw a lot of Hispanic workers out there rebuilding, while they would pan to African Americans sitting on the stoop having a beer, you know?
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
were just kind of like pointing out without saying it, look at those lazy Americans. They can't even rebuild their own city after a natural disaster. Well, a lot of Black Americans in 2005, a lot of them weren't working before Hurricane Katrina happened, and they were excited because they knew there would be a lot of jobs available, and the jobs would pay because it would be hard, dirty work.
Mhm.
And those Americans went up and they had secured a job. They started working for a few days, and then they got the word, hey, you guys have to go. We're bringing in Hispanic workers, and you're no longer needed. So, it's not that Americans don't want to work. A lot of times we're being forced out of industries because companies are utilizing cheap labor. If you look at the housekeeping market in the 80s, in
Mhm.
California, the housekeeping market was predominantly Black, and
Right.
they were making the equivalent of then, in today's money with inflation, $30 an hour.
Mm.
But when they brought in the cheap labor, it busted up the unions that was giving Black Americans these good wages, and now we see that the wages have been lowered, and that the dominant group working in California are Hispanics in the
Mhm.
housekeeping market. In Washington, D.C., the majority of construction workers were Black Americans in the 80s. And now, if you go to any scaffolding or any construction site, you'll see mainly Hispanic workers. What has changed? Did Black Americans say, we're too good for construction work? No. And I can tell you that I did a study about my family's history,
Mhm.
and I found out that I come from sharecroppers and slaves.
Mhm.
And I did a little digging, and I found that many of my family members had been working in farming for over 100 years. I actually pulled tobacco when I was in middle school and high school. And when I started working in the fields, there were mainly middle-aged black men working in the fields. By the time I got ready to graduate high school, it was mainly Hispanic workers that had taken over. And a lot of those middle-aged black people had disappeared. They were no longer working there. Now, at the time, I didn't know that I was witnessing workers' displacement in real time, but that's what it was. And the perception is Black Americans don't work. It's not true.
Well, as you were talking about those jobs, I'm looking at today, and I'm looking at here in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm seeing more Hispanic police.
Yep.
When you go to the airports, you see more Hispanic workers. You go in the hospitals, I'm seeing more Hispanic workers. I recall a time period where a lot of young people graduated from college and they were sending them to Korea for sure. And what were they doing? They were teaching them how to speak English. They were getting these jobs over there, teaching them how to speak English. And so now, when you're on the phone, and whether you're calling the bank or you're calling a store, a company, who are you talking to on the phone? It's
Right.
typically someone from another ethnic group, and they're often in their country.
Yep.
The utility companies, all these different major companies. You call customer service, sales jobs on the phone. It's typically somebody from India or Asia that you're talking to on the phone. I mean, I've
Right.
heard roosters crowing in the background, and it's like, well, where are you? You
Right.
know, so when you talk about these corporations, and you talk about unions, they don't want unions,
Mm-hmm.
because unions are demanding better working conditions.
That's right.
Unions are demanding a livable wage,
Yep.
and that whole concept of America. I think some people, before they come over here, just in my travels and talking to people, actually think America's paved with streets are paved with gold. Actually
Yeah.
think that. But once they get here and have to try to survive here, I think they have a better understanding is that, yeah, you making more money, but you're spending more, you
Right.
know. More of it is going out of your pocket, different ways. It's like a monopoly game. You're going around the board, and
Yep.
more people are getting your dollars, whether you're paying for it. We pay for grocery bags now,
Right.
15 cents for a grocery bag.
Ooh, 15
Yeah,
cents. Ooh.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nickel and dime you, but it adds up.
Yeah, it does.
Um, and so, these we see these changes in who is getting these jobs. And then, I look at the schools and how the schools, took the vocational programs out of the
Yep.
schools. And so a lot of our kids that may have been going into some of these construction jobs, carpentry, heating and cooling, and what have you, they're coming out. They don't have the skills, on top of other things that have happened in our educational system here. But this is why I think organizations like Numbers USA is so important, because when you mention you have over 8 million people, you know, and you can pick up the phone. And we have been talking about public policy here
Right.
on this program, and trying to help people to understand that this is how laws are made, laws that impact your life every day. And you have the ability to create these laws, these policies, or get them into law, and you have an ability to influence them. But we got to have the numbers. We got to start looking at numbers. you know
Absolutely.
if
And I
numbers
want to share
is the
this.
issue around immigration, then we need to think of it this way, people. We need to start thinking about numbers. you know
Right.
and those numbers, the more people that you have on board, the more you're able to push some of these policies, and to help
Absolutely.
protect us, because as you said, Barbara Jordan said that she was immigration should be protecting the most vulnerable. Well,
Yes.
who would you say is the most
Well,
vulnerable
I'll tell
today?
you what she said. She said Black Americans, teenagers, and new immigrants that are recently settled in the United States. Those
Hmm.
are the groups of people that are often edged out of the workforce. And it is those people now, specifically teenagers, that a lot of Chicago is complaining about with the teen takeovers.
Teen
And
takeovers.
I'm wondering, Denise, if these teenagers had jobs, if they had a little bit more responsibility instead of having all this time on their hands, would they be out there doing some of the things that they're doing? I don't
That's
think so.
right. That's
I
right.
don't
And you
think
can
so.
and you can create some of this. It starts in school, you
That's
know,
right.
picking up crafts,
Hmm.
whether it's music
Right.
or dance or art, or you're
Or
interested in the
chess.
math and science, and these different sports and
Hmm.
chess, like you say, chess, different things
Yep.
like that. And they don't get a chance to, develop in any of the skills in those areas. And then they don't just take that away, but then a lot of places for them to go and have a good time is being taken away.
That's right.
you
Absolutely.
know
And they have to have spaces to do that.
yes,
And
they do.
one of the things that you said earlier that I wanted to kind of come back to was the immigrant networking. And when we're looking at that from a public policy standpoint, we can really look at Minnesota as a model of what happens when people come from other countries and they work the system. And even though it was fraud, what they did was set themselves up in a situation where they had strong political power. They
Mhm.
brought all those people in, the people got jobs, they started having more kids, they started having more political power. And if you look at some of the leadership and some of the interviews that they did with the Somalis, and when they were addressing them, they would speak to them in their language. They would walk on eggshells and just like everything that they were saying, they were being so careful to ensure they did not upset them because they had so much political capital. So it is important that we look at policies because people coming into the country, they're studying our laws, they're studying our
That's right.
policies.
They
And
know
if
it
we
better
don't,
than we do.
they know it better than we do. And if we don't look at the policies that we're voting on, if we don't look at the elected officials and their history on different public policies that affect our everyday lives, then we're going to be stuck in a situation similar to Minnesota, where everyone is benefiting off of frauding the system, and then regular Americans are just struggling as we're trying to make ends meet by working by the regular rules.
Hmm. Wow. So when we start to look at those things that we have to address when it comes to immigration, and we talk about the border,
Hmm.
and what we need to do in terms of the border. We're identifying those different things we need to look at, whether people have overstayed their visas. um, I hear, about the terrorists, what Trump talks about,
Yep.
terrorists, people that shouldn't, people who really shouldn't be here. Where's Numbers USA with that list of
Everything that you mentioned, there are laws in Congress right now. There are bills in Congress that could be addressing those issues. These bills even become more important when we're talking about people overstaying their visas. There was one of the terrorists at well, one of the shooter from Columbia University. He was actually a visa overstay.
Mm-hmm.
Or there might have been some terrorists or some people that were in our visa lottery program. We have a lottery, which basically people put their name on an application. They pull the name out of a hat, and if your name is pulled, then you get into the country. Well, there's not a lot of vetting. It doesn't, it's not for the benefit of Americans, because our immigration system should benefit American workers, okay? Benefit the American economy. And if we're bringing in people that are not benefiting the economy, then why are we have a whole system that creates competition for Americans in industries where we don't need that competition, when we should be focusing on bringing in Americans out of the outskirts of the workforce back to to jobs where they can start providing for their family instead of being on government assistance.
I remember the first time I traveled to Africa, and I went to Ghana, and a lot of the people there were vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And many African Americans, were coming over there. And I remember hearing someone say that they were making sure that they kept the majority of those vending jobs for their people,
Yep.
because that's what they had the ability to do as far as being able to sustain themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I should ask what happened here. Uh, but yeah, what happened here where our political officials are not looking out for the American people like they should, where our Black politicians are not looking out for our people like they should? Um, what happened that we got these major corporations that seem like they've taken over uh, our government?
Absolutely. One of the things that our founder Roy brings up in the book, that there was a period of 4 presidents that vetoed everything that dealt with lowering immigration. Now, their feeling is that they needed immigrants to function in the country. If they didn't have them, then our economy would fall apart.
Who were
And
those presidents?
let me give you those
Remember.
presidents. I'm gonna
That's
find that for you. But I'm gonna continue with my point real quick.
sure.
Those presidents, that was their thought. Now, this was their thought to veto, even though Congress was getting pressure from their constituents to lower immigration. So
Mhm.
the polling that we have, the 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 sentiment from citizens and the things that people were hearing and going back to history, most Americans wanted lower immigration at that time. And there were 4 presidents in a row that vetoed it. And then came 2 presidents that didn't. Calvin Coolidge was one of them, and the other one was Harding, President Harding. And President Harding got a bill passed in 1921. And then that was only for a limited time. So the bill that he had created um, blocks, stumbling blocks, basically. They wanted to make it harder for immigrants to function in the United States. And one of the things that they did was they created like a reading test. So if they couldn't pass this reading test, then they weren't going to be allowed in, and it was going to help lower immigration. So they wanted to lower immigration by focusing on ability. But in 1924, Calvin Coolidge had a bill that focused on lowering immigration based on a number. So they had a cap on the amount of immigrants that they were going to allow in. And that was a lot more effective. And it was effective for 41 years until around 1965, where in 1965 you had the Hart-Celler Act. And one of the goals of the Hart-Celler Act was they wanted to deal with the racial quotas, because one of the things that was happening in the 1924 Immigration Act is that they had quotas of the number of people coming from different countries, and it was racist. And they wanted to deal with that. But one of the things that they promised was that they weren't going to increase the number. Of course, accidentally, the numbers did increase, and one of the ways that it did was through a loophole, because as they were bringing in people to come in at 300,000 a year, they weren't keeping track of who they were bringing in. So the number went up astronomically after 1965, and in the 70s, this is where you see a decline in how well Black Americans were doing, because as bad as Jim Crow was, what did we have during that time? You had a strong Black family.
Yep,
Black Americans had access to jobs.
that's
And
right.
part of that was because of the 1924 Immigration Act. So this book really goes over the 1924 Immigration Act in detail. It goes over the sentiments of the people and the presidents, going back to the Ellis Island days of the 1860s and 1880s up to the present day. So this book really goes over the history, and it's kind of like you're there. So you guys are really gonna love this book.
And see, numbers is that's really becoming more relevant here when it comes to everything. Because even with what we have, whatever we have in our communities now, we don't have enough people to do certain things that we want to do. A case in point, we've got the you got the boycott going on, nationwide, supposedly in certain areas against
Mm-hmm.
the some of the Asian nail salons.
Right.
Well, they have so many, nail salons,
Right.
um, and we struggling trying to. I could probably count, how many Black nail salons we have here in Chicago,
Right.
easily. So it's like they can absorb the loss almost,
Yeah.
they don't have, it's like, okay, we're not going in their store, in some of these stores, but it's so many that they're still going in, and they've got
Yeah.
so many of them. And when we need contractors, we don't have enough. The numbers are not there. You need a plumber. How many? I only know a few Black plumbers. You only know a couple of Black electricians, and only know few Black people that do certain things. We just don't have the numbers. And then if somebody is good, they get saturated,
Yep.
and they can only absorb so much. It reminds me of when uh, the founder of the a bank that we support here, the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. He said, Denise, if all the Black people took all their money out of Chase Bank and Citibank and all these other banks and brought them over here, it would run us out of business.
That's right. That's
Because
right.
we're not able, we're not able to absorb it. And so numbers becomes very significant. It's something that we really have to think about.
Absolutely.
And so we
And
tend to be tribal and cliquish, but we can't afford to do that. We need the numbers.
that's right. And what you're talking about right now sounds a lot like Booker T. Washington. And I just want to do a quick quote from him. He said, "If we don't wake up to our opportunities, do not put brain and skill into common occupations by whatever name called that are immediately about our door, we shall find that a class of foreigners will come in and take our places just as they already done in relation to certain industries." Well, what he's saying is that we have to really start taking on jobs and taking on training. And I think this is going to have to be the next revolution for Black Americans. We have to get Black Americans back to work. We have to get Black Americans trained. We have to start demanding that we're involved with all these different industries and outwork all these people that are coming in from all these places around the world, and then also expect an American wage. And I think
Mhm.
that it's going to have to be a two-way street. Is if you want this labor, if you want American workers that are going to be dependable, then you need to pay a fair wage. And because these companies are not held accountable and they can pay people under the table, they don't they want people that are desperate. They want people that they can, work how many ever hours that they want. They want people that can't just, if they get upset or if they find like a better opportunity, they can't just leave because they're worried that if they just leave or they get an attitude with an employer about the conditions that they're working under, they could be reported and deported. So
And I have seen Americans walk away from some of these jobs, because
absolutely.
they don't like the way they're being treated, or something, that they don't like, and just up and quit.
Absolutely. And we have the right to do that as
Hmm.
Americans. But
Hmm.
a lot of these business owners, they don't like that. They're
Hmm.
used to having you know, total authoritarian power and no
Hmm.
one pushes back against them. But
Hmm.
Americans will push back.
That's right.
And it has to be a two-way street. And we need to start with our young people and just start building these programs that teach them how to work, that shows them the importance of work. And we need to hold these corporations and employers accountable for putting in the discipline and the training that it's going to take, and committing to that training to usher in this generation that has been left behind.
That's right. Very important. Family, we've been talking about immigration. We've been talking about numbers. This is Andre Barnes with Numbers USA. And as you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and knowledge is power. And that's
Absolutely.
why we support our bookstores here in Chicago, which are our Black bookstores are growing in numbers here. And I'm so happy to see that. And we still have our book giveaway, our winner for A Dream Deferred by Abby Phillips, which is a story of Jesse Jackson, who recently passed here in Chicago. And our winner was Nadra Smiley. Nadra, you will be receiving a copy of this book. And so we support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, which I mentioned here, which is a Black-owned institution. Uh, they need us to open up an accounts. And we want you to go to Save Black Bookstores Chicago at change.org and sign our petition, because we have created an ordinance that we are working on now to get more dollars and more support to our Black bookstores. And then you can please come to our website at rrgbc.org and support our work. And then we have a new page which ties into what we're talking about today, looking up your public official. All you have to do is go to our menu page, type in your address, and all of your political officials will pop up. You'll see your aldermen and your state reps and your congressmen. A lot of our people don't know who these people are. We also talk about what their responsibilities are to you and under what circumstances you might want to contact them. And so understanding public policy is really important. And that's all of what you've been talking about today. These are all public policy issues. Reparations is a public policy issue. And we as a people, if we come together with the right numbers and support each other, we can push against some of these large corporate conglomerates that have taken over and not looking out for our best interests, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you guys want more information about immigration policy, public policy, that and bills that you can support, you can go to numbersusa.org and you can take an action. You can also join numbersusa.org and you'll receive our newsletter and we'll send you updates about what your elected officials are actually doing on immigration at the federal level. So, and if you're ever looking for a speaker or you have an idea for an event, contact me at abarnes@numbersusa.org and I'll be glad to hear your ideas. And if I can support it, I will be down there in person to help in person. Or if I know somebody else, I'll send them down to help. But you guys be blessed. I appreciate you, Denise, for having me on the show. I'll let you do the wrap up.
Okay. And as you know, we're about supporting Black businesses. You can go to our website. We have the Black Pages International, or we have Chicago Eats with over 500 Black restaurants in the area that you can go to. We have to support our businesses so those dollars will circulate in our communities. So, Andre, I want to thank you for coming tonight. And as I say always at the end, please remember to support Black businesses.
Absolutely.
All right. You have a good night.
You too.